You like engines? Do you like to talk about engines? Then you're at the right place. From Engines 101 to practices that you can help you in your machine shop. Welcome to the Engine Professional Podcast.
Well, Chuck, we're coming into June. All I can say is, can someone please slow this bus down? I mean, it is going fast. I don't know where this year's going. It's just slow the bus down. That's all I can say.
That's a fact. Maybe we'll get a little reprieve after June, but it's slam packed too.
Exactly. No, that's right. And yeah, we've had a busy May. We had a few things on the go that kept us hopping. For the listeners, I know we've got some updates to our Prosis Pro, and they're starting to see those out there. And I know we've taken a few calls with some folks that have mentioned they've seen our new feature with the metric and the imperial, and how you can default to either one as well as to both. So I know that calls are coming on that. So we've got that to look forward to. We got Prosis out there. We got some diagram improvements with Prosis as well. So when you click into an engine, again, if you're using Prosis Pro, now you can see the diagrams right there when you're in the engine rather than having to click the separate tab. So that's another nice feature that's pretty cool. And Chuck, I know in May you hit some regionals. You were out in Tennessee. You were at the Choate Tech and Skills Conference, and how did that go?
That went well. It was a different program than what we typically do. We had stations set up. We had 7 different stations. Now, Choate Engineering, they have a very big facility, and they have plenty of room. This doesn't normally work most places, but hey, when you have the opportunity, take advantage of it. So we had 7 stations set up. Cylinder honing. We had boring, cylinder head machining, like resurfacing, cutting valve seats, and so forth. We actually even had some under the hood diagnostic stuff with Pico. Chris Hammond, who had done a presentation at Epic, was actually on site and did a presentation on Pico scoping. So we had something for the engine machine shop guy and the underhood technician. So, and I think we had about 20 guys that were from automotive repair facilities that were there as well. So yeah, that was good. And again, it was a little different dynamic, but it was fun and it was interesting.
Yeah, no, that is cool because, again, be able to have the hands-on like that, to be able to do that at someone's shop and be able to do it in that fashion, that's kind of what these are all about. And that's pretty cool to do that. And then we were over in the Netherlands for one, and we don't do that very often. I mean, we went international, and the folks over there, it was like a little mini Rottler open house kind of thing. They had it on their property. They have 2 warehouses there. They had full of equipment. They had a band, like a different band for each night. I don't know if this is the way they do it in the Netherlands, but they had bartenders. You could have had a beer in your hand at 10 o'clock in the morning while you were out there, testing machines and that kind of stuff. It was super cool. So again, that one really went well. We picked up some new members over there. They treated us like first class. I mean, they literally did. The folks over there are super friendly. And that was a really good regional, and I hope we can get over there and collaborate with them again sometime in the future. We also dropped into England, and we did some shop tours there as well before we went to Amsterdam and into that area. Really, really nice shops. I was really surprised to see just how many young folks are in the shops over there. I mean, it was nice to see that the youth is still in there. And we were treated, we talk about this, Chuck, all the time about how this industry is like a brotherhood. And we literally, Steve Fox and I got in, and we were just picked up from the airport, and we had 2 hosts there from Gosney's Engineering that looked after us. And basically, they just looked after everything. And what I mean by brotherhood, I mean, that's just how this industry is. I know you can relate to the same thing. It doesn't matter where in the world you go. You can quickly find someone that builds engines, make a contact and a connection, and these guys look after you. It's just super cool.
Yeah, that's a fact. I was on another podcast, with Miles Bell, and that's with the like Dave's Auto Center. I'm sure everyone's knows Dave Bell, but Miles and I were talking about that as well. It's just the relationship. You don't really pick the neighborhood that you grew up in or something like that. But we chose a industry to be a part of, and the like-minded people that join the industry they truly become a brotherhood. So it's really good. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't matter where you go. Like I say, everybody looks after you. You've got something in common, and you just have that networking to share, that back and forth. And looking forward to more events like this in the future. So, looking at June, we've got two more of our Tech and Skills conferences. We've got the Edmonton Regional, which is June 7th, up in Edmonton, Canada. And that one's shaping up to be really good. I saw the numbers just before we did doing the podcast here, and it's looking really, really strong. So we'll be up in Canada for that one. And then we got Goodson. I know you'll be out in Minnesota for that one on June 20th. And that's looking really good as well. Goodson always puts on a great event.
Right. It's going to be a great bang up show, I believe, in a car museum. So that's always it's very fitting, right? That's what we do. So yeah, and it's a nice place in the country to be, and I don't think a lot of people get into that region so much. But we're a couple hours from Minneapolis, to the south of Minneapolis, and so yeah, look forward to seeing some of the folks from that region out there, because we do have a ton of members from Minnesota and Wisconsin, Iowa that we probably expect to see there. So yeah, definitely looking forward to that.
Yeah, that'll be great. And then once we get those out of the way, I guess one of the last ones is coming up. Then I'll be in the St. Louis area on July 21st through 24th for the ASE Instructors Conference. So we got, it just keeps hopping, Chuck. Like I said, the wheels on this bus just keep going around, and we keep moving forward. So there's always something to go to and always something to do. So looking forward to what's coming up there.
Yeah, it's great to see all the folks that come out and get to put a name and a face together. I did a little bit of custom training and got to get into a shop I've never been to before just last week. It just that's super rewarding. And I think I shared as I was driving back to AERA headquarters in Cary. I got a text from a young guy who in the shop, very young gentleman, but so he's drinking from the fire hose and learning a lot. And, he shoot that message out there and said, hey, thanks for coming, sharing what you know and helping. And that's a huge reward. That's why I've been doing it for all these years.
No kidding. Yeah, no, exactly. That's right. Well, Chuck, we're in for a treat today. We do have a guest with us, and this particular gentleman, he knows his stuff when it comes to oils, and we're in for a real treat. His name is Sean Nguyen, and Sean is a technical scientist and automotive lubricant specialist over at Pennzoil. And Sean, like I say, we're in for a treat today. We're glad to have you. I'm glad you took the time to be able to spend some time with us. But how's it going today?
Great day. Weather's good. Thanks, Chuck, Rob, for inviting and allowing us to spend some time and to talk about oil and the science of oil. So my job is trying to nerd you up. You guys are gearheads, and I guess I'm the oil nerd and the oil gearhead in that sense. And so hopefully we can collaborate and share with your audience.
Well,
Yeah, we don't often
exactly.
work with scientists, so that's pretty cool.
And if you don't do your job well, Sean, there's a lot of our folks that are definitely busy, doing their, fixing a lot of broken parts. So your job's pretty important for what we do for a living. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, like I said, we could make the best thing since sliced bread, but we can't put it out in the market and the consumer doesn't know it. Then it doesn't go anything but sitting on the shelf. So appreciate the opportunity to share some knowledge with the audience.
Sure. So Sean, what's a typical day to day for you? What typically are you involved in from day to day?
Oh wow, multiple hats. I got multiple roles. I am recruiting to talk to collegiate students and high school students on occasion. But my typical day is spending time just talking to consumers, influencers, and gearheads, just to share the knowledge of why lubricant is important, right? Lubrication is important because we can make the best engines in the world, but if we don't have the proper lubricants, it's not going to go far down that drag strip or to take the kids to the soccer practice. So the challenge is making sure that we get the right products in the right equipment.
So speaking of the right products, kind of start at the top of the list here. Like the ILSAC GF7 standard was officially launched in March of 2025.
Yes.
Can you walk us through the most significant improvements over the GF6 and what that means for an everyday driver?
Yes. GF6, and for the consumer, that they might not even notice the label on the bottles, right? But the changes technically on the side is subtle changes with some changes that will help improve the protection of the hardware over the lifetime. The major improvements, GF6 added on features of low speed pre-ignition, fuel economy components, wear protection, cleanliness protection, all the chain wear, which is now the new thing of protection from timing chain. What GF7 did is that we recognize, or the industry recognized, that the big issue with the modern day engines is they've gotten smaller. They've gotten down to about 4 cylinders. They're adding turbos to add additional boost and power, and those reduction in shrinkage in engines, as well as introduction of direct injection, also leads to issues that the industry has seen in the last more than 10 years, right? Of pre-ignition, basically a a hot particle mixing with maybe some unburnt fuel in the combustion chamber, causing the combustion chamber to ignite before it is supposed to be timed. Thus, as the piston may be on the way up or on the way down, whichever, it's not all the way to the top dead center, and the explosion happens, thus leading to catastrophic failure. For most of us, we hear it as either a quiet knock until it gets to be bigger, then become a big knock, and next thing you know, you broke a valve, you broke a piston, you tore up an engine. And that's what the industry addressed for the last maybe since 2016, right? What GF7 did is that we recognized that we had to protect the engine from that through the oil additive, through oil chemistry. The fuel industry also helped to mitigate some of those issues. What the OEMs and the equipment manufacturers are seeing is that as the oil is being used in the 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 miles, the age oil is no longer, or did not seem to be protecting as it should. So the new GF7 is asking for protecting of low speed pre-ignition in the used oil, not just in new, now it's new and used, right? So that's one of the major changes. Couple of other changes along the way is timing chain protection. So the limits have gotten tighter because we wanted the manufacturer concerned with fuel efficiencies, and all this lead to fuel efficiencies. And if the timing chain is off, even by thinner than a length of a hair, it can mess with the timing because all the electronic timing, variable valve timing, and so forth lead to other issues. And so that miss in that micrometer in a sense, can cause improper ignition in the engine and leads to inefficiencies that they're challenged to try to do. We have other things like engine cleanliness. So there's tighter limits on engine cleanliness, and as well as fuel economy, not including all the other benefits that is required for the new oil to be in play to protect those engines for the consumer. Long-winded story.
Yeah, I
And
think
Sean,
some of the things that have probably been missed, especially with multiple timing chains per engine. We were kind of spoiled when you had a single chain and you had 40 links or something, but now you have 150 links. And I've been in toured some facilities that manufacture, and the surface finish of the pin that goes through the links, that's very important. And then they had to really work on the hole that they pierced for the link to go through, because of the surface finish of the hole that's pierced into the link. Say if that wears a couple of tenths, well, it wasn't a big deal when it was times 40, but when it's times 150, now it's a problem. So very interesting that that's come together. You had also mentioned like the particles that enter the combustion chamber. Is that like old used oil, or is it a particular chemical, or
I think it theoretically is a combination of things, right? Because the science is still a theory in how preignition occurs, especially now with a direct injection, where you no longer have gas being shoot into the intake valves, and of course you have exhaust gas recirculators coming back. Unburnt gas comes into play, and so what we're seeing is accumulation of more carbon deposit on the intake valves, and as the engine is moving from 750 to 3,000, 5,000 RPM, a little flake may come off. And that flake of carbon gets into the combustion chamber, becomes basically is like, the diesel has the igniter, right? There's a hot igniter in a diesel. So basically you had a hot particle. It could also be caused with fuel, where fuel is not atomized properly, so that you get that a perfect stoichiometric combination 101, right? So those large pockets of fuel may be unburnt from the last combustion, so it floats in there, and then get out of the exhaust. Any one of those can. So now you have fuel, you got a hot particle, boom. It doesn't take much, and we see catastrophic results. I have pistons at home that the ring landings are just completely blown out. I have bent valves in my labs, in my training room. So those are really good examples of what happens when you have preignition.
And I know, Chuck, on the tech line, we take calls, we get failure analysis. Folks will send us pictures of, like you mentioned, Sean, with the rings, like the pistons basically just blown right out. And they really can't believe when we mention the fact that, what are you running for oil? Like, we'll talk about the oil, and they think that we're, they ready to hang up the phone because they think, you guys couldn't diagnose any, what do you mean oil? How can oil have anything to do with what's going on? And this is what we're seeing.
Yes, and the chemistry of oil does help, right? We've seen the lowering of the magnesium. You've seen the increase of the calcium concentrations, the way that we attack it through chemistry to help mitigate that. Because we all recognize that fuel comes across the rings, oil comes across the rings, and they get the chance to mix and dance in that little beautiful combustion chamber. And the right chemistry and the right environment can cause catastrophic events.
Can you explain just a little bit how GF7 addresses some of this LSPI and some of the timing chain wear issues? Can you elaborate on that just a little bit?
Well, into not specifics, right? Because they have different test requirements for that, and the nice thing is they're all done by third-party labs, and whereas we don't run it, we just send the samples out, get it run, so the consumer know that it is done by a third party and not a bias type test. All that's regulated by the industry, controlled by the industry in in the specification. LSPI basically is placed inside if the industry use the standard, which is the Ford EcoBoost, right? I think if I look at it right, it's a 2000, was it a 2012 Ford 2.0 liter EcoBoost engine, and that's the reference engine that they test in. And of course, they create condition to stimulate LSPI, and the whole test is in that test cycle. They're allowed maximum of four knock event in the entire test set cycle, which is 260 hours, right? So an oil has to be able to pass that, a new oil. The same thing would be with the used oil. The used oils would then sent to another test to age the oil, and then the aged oil is then introduced into that engine to be run in the new cycle test to measure the same conditions. And so that oil that will pass will not allow more than four uh, uh, small knock event will pass that test. 260 hours doesn't seem much, but to the conditions of the test is pretty stringent, pretty robust in the way it measures that. Other things like chain wear, right? So I mentioned that chain wear. You talk about how chains are, how the holes are drilled, and how the fittings of each individual link. The maximum on the test on the chain wear, I'm pulling up. I want to make sure I have my numbers correct, right? A chain wear test, the maximum they can allow a chain length stretching for the test is 0.08% of the length. And so if you got uh, maybe a 30-inch chain or something like that. Not much of a length at all. It's thinner than a hair. So those are really stringent qualification because if in that test, what it is, you age the oil to cause more carbon buildup, more sludge buildup. So the cleanliness of the test has to be to prevent the oil from accumulating those carbon particles. Those carbon particles then will cause wear when the chain meet the gear teeth, right? And so those are the areas that you got concerns with. So cleanliness is the other factor. Is the sequence 3H, the sequence 5G, 5H test to cause to measure the amount of sludge or the resistance to the amount of sludge and piston buildup in the oil. That because the piston is one of the hottest area in the engine, right? That you're sitting right underneath the combustion chamber. So those are the critical areas where you want to make sure that you have protections in the ring landing so that the ring stays loose. You want to make sure that the crown stay clean and no buildup. We can't control physically what fuel is being used, but in the test, the fuels are being controlled. Some of the conditions will cause high fuel dilution just to create the sludge and the buildup. It is a very severe series of tests that puts the limits to the performance of the oil. Not something that we will see in our daily use, unless your engine is leaking like a sieve. Then it becomes an issue for you to keep that engine clean.
Right. Wow.
So how have some of your flagship products like the platinum and ultra platinum performed in this area?
Well, I don't want to toot my horn, but I think we did really well. And you have to do it well. You have to do well to pass the API to get the stamp of approval from API and ILSAC to get the GF7 approval, right? The GF7 approval, I would say, is a very challenging um, test to qualify. So it is a difficult test to qualify. And luckily, since 2018, we had time. We had 6 years to develop that. And right now, the industry is talking about the next generation GF6. As soon as we're launching GF7, they're talking, okay, let's go for GF8. Uh, 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 very in a very near window. Um, so how do I would say it is, you don't want to sit there and say, "Well, you're the best thing since sliced bread," but we're good in that we test our oils in some of the stringent areas. I just had a call with our team rather this morning, right, where we're testing our oils in New York taxi fleets. We're testing our oils in Las Vegas taxi fleet, and we I think we have a taxi that's running on our conventional oil that's broke 750,000 miles talking about the ability for the oil, and it's the engine still hums beautifully, and we're thinking about collecting that engine, bring it home, and put it in our museum to show for show and tell. Um, that's the only way for us to demonstrate the ability of our oils to keep it clean. I have an engine where I just told our taxi fleet pull me two engines so that I can look at it after 300,000 miles. And they're sitting, and I put it as a demo now. It's running right now as dry run to show the cleanliness and the ability of our oil to keep that engine clean as well as to prevent it from wear. And those are the performance because we could put I can throw all the marketing lingo and hyperboles in it, but I think the proof is in the pudding. And when we demonstrate it, we have actual samples of it. We have actual samples of the quality. Actually, I have pictures in the lab of two identical engines that were running in two taxis. One was running on a different base oil than our base oil, right? Our Pennzoil shell product base oil, which we call GTL. Exact same formulation, and the engine comes out so much cleaner. Wear protection is still there, but the cleanliness you see in the valve covers, you see in the timing deck, all those areas, you see a more darker varnish on it versus the one that was running on GTL. And that's just base oil. So the challenge for us as chemists is playing that balance. I use the soup analogy. I use food analogy a lot because I love food, and I use making oil is kind of like making your favorite soup. You got to start with a good base stock. Use good ingredients to make that soup because for us as consumers, right, all oils look alike. They're all brown. They're honey brown. They look beautiful. They smell beautiful. Well, to me, it smells beautiful, not to other people. But how do you differentiate that? That's difficult. The You got to go with the top tier, the name brands, the big guys who are doing a lot of that research to demonstrate the performance of their products. Um, so those are the challenges: picking the right ingredients, putting it into your favorite soup, so that you can feel good that you're getting the right soup or the right flavor. Because all of us, let's say, Rob, you mentioned you're in Canada. I don't know what does Canadian. Well, I'm thinking north. That's the northeast is clam chowder. You have a favorite clam chowder place, right? That you go to. There's 1,500 restaurants that makes clam chowder, but you got one favorite one because why? That flavor is right for you, and that's the way I look at it when we make oil. That flavor of Pennzoil, the Pennzoil Platinum, the Pennzoil Ultra Platinum is the ingredients where we put the cream of the crop in it. We put the high grade performance product. We put the high grade performance base oils to give you that perfect soup where we felt really strong about the performance and stand behind that full heartedly.
No, that makes sense. I like that analogy with the soup. That makes perfect sense. And you kind of hinted on this just a little bit, how GF7 is helping maintain, the cleanliness in pistons, and like the typical things that we see get carboned up or problem areas in an engine. Pistons, intake and exhaust valves. And you mentioned that GF7 is actually working to improve that. So, like you said, when our shops start taking these engines apart later in life, things are going to look a lot cleaner by the sounds of things.
Oh, I would definitely think so. As long as they keep an eye, I educate, make sure you get the right viscosities, right? We see that getting the wrong viscosities that can cause catastrophic issues. Then getting premium performance oils. Uh, I'm gonna promote Pennzoil to my dying days. But there are other great products out there in the marketplace. And whatever you do, you guys who are engine builders, who know the sound of your engine, the smell of your engine, you know it much better than I would when it comes to engine and hardware. But uh, you have experience with the oils, the premium performance oils out there that you like. Okay, great. Stick with that. If you are really into a hard knock, really a gearhead, and do oil analysis programs and so forth, just to be able to see the performance, do that because it's a cheap way to kind of build additional knowledge, right, in how your oil is behaving in your engine, in the way that you drive, in the way that you perform your engines perform. Because two exact engine, two different drivers. Chuck, I know Chuck, you drive a completely different run drop, right? And those are the challenges that puts the oil. The oil and the fuel do its part, but it's up to the driver to do the maintenance.
Yeah, maintenance is a real challenge. I think, you mentioned about particles breaking loose and moving. And so some of our listeners we know aren't going to be engine people or, even technical car people. But, you talked about that particle coming off of a valve. And it's not too uncommon now to see an engine that will hit 6,000 RPMs on the street. Some of the racing stuff, you're seeing 12 to 15, 20,000 RPMs in Formula One. But, at 6,000 RPMs, the valve opens and closes 50 times per second. And when it opens, it sees exhaust temperatures of like 1,000 degrees, and it cools that seat down. Or, when it touches the seat, it cools down to like 400 degrees. So it's just hard to rationalize what is going on there. So, those particles, yeah, they have the opportunity to break loose and become a problem elsewhere.
Absolutely. If I look, I look at myself as a molecule sitting on that valve deck, on that valve stem, or the seat, and just at the movement, it is basically a Cat 5 tornado hurricane, right? Ripping everything apart. And it doesn't take much. The carbon, is I did a whole year of studying how carbon accumulates, right? It's, you know, as soon as you get one molecule of carbon, they become like magnets to each other. And they just build and build. And that's why you see in the back of those valves, they kind of built that little crust. For the consumer, the bottom of your frying pan. That is the classic example. Back to food again. I'm sorry, guys. That's just the way I am. You feel that, you see that crust build on the back of that frying pan when you have overflow of oil over time. And that's exactly it. And just take a little bit of our vibration for that little particle. You know, if we can see it, it's beyond 10 microns, right? So it's huge. And carbon, it's just a poor man's version of a diamond, isn't it? So it was scuff anything you can think about. And that's the challenge that we try to avoid, is prevent that. Oil would help that, well, when it does, oil will grab it, suspend it. By the time you drain it, hopefully it comes out. So it will not be there to create that scuff anywhere part in the engine. That's our challenge, and that's what we try to do every day.
So on that, in talking with like the changes in the oils, so the GF7 being backward compatible with common viscosity grades. So what should consumers know about upgrading from a GF6? Are the benefits good for the older engines?
It is. That's the first thing required by API and ILSAC, right? Any new engine oil that comes out to play or go into the marketplace must be backwards compatible, meaning that it has to be able to be used in previous designation, right? It goes all the way, well, the current one, the API SL or GF4 or 3 will then be discontinued, right? So nothing being made in the marketplace should have those new those older GF3 designation. GF4 would be hard to find also. So the consumer would then feel assured that if they had a uh, 90s car, a early 2000 car, perfectly fine to use this. And actually, we've done experiments. We've done experiments I mentioned with taxi fleets. Well, we had cars that had over 100,000 miles and throw in our new GF7 on it. No issues, actually better protection, better wear cleanliness, better other those issues because of the performance benefit that we have put into the oil. So the consumer can feel safe that they can do that. Now, we have classic car. Let's have a different conversation. Let's have a different show. Okay.
Right.
Now,
Right.
yeah, if you change everything and you maintain your oil like clockwork, no issues going with GF7 at all for the consumer.
Good deal. So I'm going to switch gears just a little bit and go back into, maybe a little bit diverge away from, the API stuff, and talk a little bit more about the carbon and then maybe some oil film breakdown and so forth. But you had mentioned that, as carbon starts to build up, it's like a magnet. It wants to stick to itself and it's very hard. I know that like on the backside of bearings, you start to see carbon accumulate back there, like the coking of the oil. And in my understanding is when you have that, now you also have kind of a barrier because coked oil is kind of like glass and is no longer a good conductor. It doesn't carry the heat away. It's actually kind of an insulator because it is not moving. It is not flowing.
Yeah, but that's a very good uh, topic. I I spent some time looking at how, well, you think about it. There's just a hot area on a bearing, right? You mentioned how the coke or the carbon buildup is an insulator. So the bearing stays hot at that point. And as the bearing rotates, it pulls in and create a high pressure point to try to lift that bearing away from the journals, right? But the back area where it's getting the heat is not allowed to dissipate. So that accumulation just adds up. And so in a sense, you're cooking the back of that frying pan analogy again, and the oil or the fuel just get fried and just vaporize. And so that vaporization that we see exactly is in the back of the intake valve is the vaporized gas and unburnt fuel that accumulates the same thing we see in the back of an intake valve. You see that growth of microbit stalactites of carbon that builds up on that, and the same thing you do. And once those parts builds up, that bearing gets starved, right? Oil starved. And now you're getting unlubricated part because it's preventing from the bearings from pulling oil from the backside or from the front side, whichever way it's feeding it. Now then you're going to lose film strength. Film strength there leads to contact, which is what we don't want, right? We don't want that boundary friction that we have. And in stress conditions, in low conditions, then you're going to scuff those bearings. And that once you scuff it, it's kind of like my old scar that I got when I was young. It doesn't go away. It's there. It's permanent. Um, and that leads to other challenge and builds up to other issues over time.
So carbonizing, for folks who I want to stretch out my oil intervals and stuff because this stuff's expensive. Well, you start to impact thermal management, and that could be even more expensive down the road when you have an engine that overheats because it can't manage the heat that's generated.
Yeah, I think that everybody recognize that oil is the cheapest thing that you can do to maintain your engine, right? Yes, the cost of oil has gone up, but at the same time, the volume of oil has gone down in the engine designs. The drain interval has been extended. So if you look at it, and the ability of the oil to protect the engine beyond 100, 150,000, 200,000, that's not uncommon nowadays, right? I grew up when we had to change. Basically, you got to buy a new car when it hits about 80,000 because that thing starts to become a, a mechanic's nightmare or mechanics wealth income stream. Uh, and so the design of the hardware and the way they're made nowadays are made more durable. So I think it pays for itself to maintain that. Now I still change my oil. I get underneath. I help my kids. That's one way for me to save. Pay attention to the promotions and the sales that we have, right? I'm gonna put a plug in right now. Pennzoil Platinum, Pennzoil Ultra Platinum. You buy 10 quarts, you get $30 back with a gift card right now, all the way to the end of August. So pay attention to that. I don't care if it's the other guys out there in the marketplace. If you like it, pay attention. Load up. I got guys with about 40 bottles or 20 gallons on the shelf. No, I have about 10 gallons of oil right now waiting for me to be used because I bought it during promotion. So use that because oils, once you buy it, look at the production date. They're good for 4 years from that production date. So be assured of that. So I think the cost is there. I recognize the cost, and we're all budget minded. But I think if we want to keep that second most expensive purchase that we ever make, other than our house, and if we love cars, and I think all your audience love cars, love engines, that they agree. Changing oil, getting a little oil on your knuckles, on drop on your face, that's part of the business. Right?
That's cheaper than buying the extended warranty for those guys that keep bugging you too, right?
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
your warranty's going out.
That is so true. So true. So Sean,
Another one that I had. Oh, sorry, Rob. Go ahead.
no, because I was just going to say, Chuck, Sean had mentioned about oil change, the intervals, and I was curious, is GF7, has it affected those intervals at all? Like, are you going to see something where, with GF7, they're going to start extending these intervals?
No, I think you have said, well, I don't know. That's all dependent on the OEMs, right? That's why when people ask me, okay, if I'm going to use platinum, I'm going to use Pennzoil Ultra Platinum. Can I go longer? I say, well, you could, but if you love your car and you want to keep it, change it, right? Change it. Um, the OEMs will determine that, and you see that, right? From BMW to Mercedes to Ford. We've shifted away from 3,000. We've gone up to five. I think most of them are 7,500 now, up to a year. And I look at it based on a couple factors: oil capacity, right? Oil quality. You notice in the last 10 years, practically all manufacturer recommendations are synthetic nowadays. There's a very minute part who are still calling for 1030s, but everybody else is 530s or 020s nowadays. So those are synthetic based to help to extend the drain. Two is the oil capacities. You see that the oil capacities for those that goes a year or 12, 20,000 miles, those guys normally have 7, 8 quarts. So they have more reserve. For the general consumer, I say buyer beware. Keep your oil level at its optimal, right? some of us, when I was on the call line. Here's a story. I'm detouring, so go with me. I had a lady call me and say, when should I change my oil? I said, well, you know, what year you make and model of your car? And I said, well, you're supposed to do that every 3,000 miles. And say, how long did you change your oil? Oh, that was 5 years ago. And I said, man, 5 years ago? Why? Well, I only drive it 20 miles a week. So for her, she was trying to get 3,000 miles. It would never get there. And that becomes an issue, right? Uh, Two is with lower reservoir, there is the engines is designed to consume a tiny bit of oil. We all know that. And if we do, and if you had 4.5, and you're 6 months later, you're down to 3 quarts. You're running with your arms behind your back in a sense. So having that reserve will help the engine do its job, help prevent aeration of the oil, help extend that oil so that it is there to fight you with both hands and both feet.
No, that makes perfect sense. Absolutely perfect sense for sure.
So I have another question, because I've seen commercials in the past, and we have conversations, and I share often, because people are like, they like high oil pressure. So I try to caution people to, stay away from those high oil pressures where the pressure regulator is open all the time, because you have a lot of situations where you go to zero clearance, so the oil's being, I hear the word shear. So can you explain what oil shear is to us and what things maybe contribute to oil shear?
Oil shearing is a physical activity, right? So I'll use the analogy since it's Labor Day weekend, or we just got over it, and it's barbecue season. It's if you look at molecules, a molecule of oil, a molecule of oil is, if consistently, is about, I'm going into chemistry now, it's about 24 to 36 carbons, depending on the viscosity, right? Carbon, so carbon molecules. A viscosity improver, go back to the food analogy again. It's kind of like your cornstarch in your soup again, right? It helps thicken up your soup. So it'll help to give you, because when I was growing up, well, when my dad was growing up, he was just a straight weight, 10 weight, right? British Columbia, 10 weight during the winter, during the winter, and then 40 weight in the summer, right? And that was the way we did. Multi viscosity came about because of viscosity improver, basically thickener that helps thicken up our oil. As we go from cold starts to 220, 200, whatever temperature that we choose to set our engine to run. And viscosity improvers are basically, back to the food analogy, are, if you look at it, kind of like a meat fiber on a brisket. And if you want to tenderize the biscuit, or the beef, you mash it up. You beat it up a little bit to break that fiber. Well, that's not what we want in oil, right? We don't want that. And that's what happens when oil breaks down, or the molecule has been broken up inside those mechanical shear stress. It could be anywhere within the engine, anywhere where there are high loads in in an oil pump. You mentioned oil pump a while ago, right? There you have gear teeth that are meshing with each other, and so you have a gear pump. So the gear teeth mesh with each other, and in that moment where they meet, there is a lot of high load, and you're squeezing that oil, and the molecules of that fiber is there. The quality of the fiber of the molecule of the viscosity modifier determines the shear stability, the resistance for the molecule to not be mashed or broken up. So, uh, and that quality can determine the value or the performance of the oil. The industry measures on automotive engine oil. I think they put it through a shear DIN test. I think it's about 30 cycles. So it runs through a cycle and measures shear breakdown. The GF7 is requiring is thinking about doing that, introducing a shear test. It is there, but they're adding a more severe shear test into that to measure viscosity breakdown if there's a breakdown, and the test will measure that. So the quality of the going back to the quality, you can have a viscosity modifier that is a straight long chain with some arms on it, and that is a great thickening agent. It'll go from 0 to 40 with a couple, maybe couple, whatever, so maybe a couple percent, right? But it's not durable. It's not stable because, in a sense, in the molecule size, we expand it to a size of a ping pong ball. It'll wrap around your whole room in that sense. And so long chain, it's kind of like you sticking your arm out the window of a semi moving 70 mile an hour, and hopefully no one else comes around. And that's what happens in the cams, in the pumps, in the bearings. All those areas are perfect areas where those long chains get smashed up, grinded down the same way we put a meat pounder on a piece of meat. So the quality of all the ingredients uh, is challenged in the industry to try to find a product to make sure it lasts, especially when we're putting products in performance. As let's say we have a European formula, a Pennzoil European formula that goes into our Europeans, our BMWs and the Mercedes, where we know the drain is longer. So we use a superior type viscosity modifier. It may not be as long, it may not thicken as much, but it's more durable, it's more concentrated, has shorter arms and not just elbows instead of big old long arms. And so that's how I visualize it to show the ability of us to do that. Go back to the soup analogy is you can select the ingredients. You can use those quality of ingredients and it's out there in the marketplace. And the combination of them will give you that flavor of that soup the way that we design it. As a chemist, that's the best way I can look at it. And so I love cooking as much as I love mixing chemicals together.
Yeah, you're in a very challenging situation now, because if you looked 40 years ago, what did the oil do in an engine? It was lubrication. And now it's a hydraulic management system. You have, with the hydraulic lash adjusters, of course, they've been around a long time. But now look at camshaft phasing. You have, shuttle valves, solenoid valves. Whatever. You have variable displacement oil pumps, variable ratio rocker arms. So the oil, it's not just lubrication anymore. It's a hydraulic supply for the engine as well. So yeah, it's a pretty challenging job for oil to live in a modern engine.
Right. And when I was, well, I'm back. Yes, 40 years ago, the basic function of oils, lubricate, okay, put a little wear in it, right? Uh, and protect that engine. Basically, that's it. And you drain it, clockwork. Now the oil has to be hydraulic, fight acids, clean, uh, contain the buildup of soot and varnish and scrub, be a thermal management working together and coincide with the coolant system to help to pull some of the heat away from the system. And so, the list of what oil needs are four in the past has now become 15 in the way that you want oil to perform. And that's a challenge. And it's an exciting challenge for us is that we're constantly pushed to develop the next thing, right? Being one of the leaders in the industry, I kind of enjoy that. I like that big target. I'd rather be in front of the pack than smelling tailpipes all day long. And that's my thing. Even though I do love smell of exhaust
Jeez,
and unburnt
exactly.
fuel.
Yep, that's funny. Yep. Well, Sean, I mean, you've given us just a wealth of information, and we really appreciate it. I mean, and what's really cool, and you're talking about a subject really that could be really, really complicated. I mean, you being a scientist, you could have made this, you could have just blown us away with all kinds of stuff, and you broke it down into terms that all of us can understand. And I know I definitely appreciate that. So thank you.
I mean, food and barbecue, my goodness, everybody needs
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Who'd have thought? Yeah, no.
Yeah, I learned that, when you start talking over people's head, when I was, yeah, if we can simplify it where my elementary kids can understand it, then I'm in a good spot. And I enjoy it. I love this, the way that we are able to contribute to the industry and to share the knowledge. Looking forward to opportunities to, hey, open invite for you to come to the Nerd Center in Houston. If you guys are in Houston, come to Nerd Center, see how we make oil. You know, we had some of our influencers came down and they make their oils for their car, from 10W60 to 0W40 European formula. They get to take and they'll make their own oil. So that's a fun activity that we do, just so that you can see the work that goes behind. It's not just the brown stuff in the bottle. It's a lot of science and effort that goes into developing the next generation products.
No, for sure. That makes total sense. And Sean, again, we appreciate your time. I know both Chuck and I were super excited to have you on and help you clarify some of this stuff for us. Because again, we're seeing the aftermath of when it doesn't work. We're seeing the broken pieces and the broken parts, and we're the ones that are scratching our head. And like I mentioned to you when we first started, it's hard to believe that oil could play such an impact on really what's going on with some of this stuff. So appreciate your time for sure.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, Chuck, it's there was a lot going on there. I mean, what a great guy to come on, and he literally broke it down, like you said, barbecue and food and soup. I mean, it doesn't get any simpler than that. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm a simple guy, and I like the simple analogies. It helps me out.
Exactly. No, exactly. So, I mean, I want to thank all our listeners for listening. We greatly appreciate it. We're always looking for your input. If you've not subscribed to the Engine Professional podcast, you can subscribe to any podcast on any podcast listening streaming service that there's out there. So you'll catch it with Engine Professional Podcast. You can also email us. You can catch us at eppodcasts@aera.org. So if you're looking for a particular topic you want us to speak on, if you'd like to join us, anything, we're more than open to having guests on for sure. By all means, please let us know about topic ideas and that kind of stuff. And we're always looking for your feedback. So what a great episode, Chuck. I really enjoyed this one. And hey, man, until next month, you stay out of trouble.
Yeah, I think with Sean's help, I may have to slide on out of here and go get a cheeseburger.
Sounds good. All right. Well, be cool, Chuck. Take her easy.
Take care.